This is the Prestigious Initiative, and these are the points. I'm Chris Bean, and here with me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we're going to discuss your conversation that you had with Mr. Quentin Carter. Do you have any key points to lead in with before I get into my notes for today?
It was great to sit down and talk with him and hear about what he's doing. I think the thing that struck me most about him is his ambition and his desire to progress us toward the future with what he's working on. I think it was great to hear the consciousness and the um, the effort he's putting into making sure that he's trying to be ethical and moral, and some of the reasons behind what he's doing, why he's doing what he's doing, was inspiring. So I'm glad we could sit down and chat with him. I a lot of the stuff that they're talking about, I don't understand. Probably will not understand for a long time. However, um, again, to hear the mission behind what they're doing, the intention behind what they're doing, and hear that they kind of have a North Star to help guide them is inspirational.
Yeah, you guys got right into kind of the meat of the matter pretty quick there. You're talking about particle physics and quantum mechanics, and it was interesting how he w was able to see concepts of those through sports games. And he talked about applying quantum mechanics and physical particle physics to sports, which is wild. I'm sure it takes a high level of understanding of those fields in order to be able to think in sports terms or to apply those in sports.
Yeah, speaking of things I don't really understand, I don't follow or know much about a lot of sports. So again, to hear him apply some of those insane topics like quantum mechanics and particle physics and everything to sports, it was impressive, to think that that's how his mind works. And I can only imagine that's got him to where he is and where he's going to go because he can apply those things to many different scenarios. But that was, yeah, I agree. It was cool to hear him kind of uh, draw those two things together when they seemingly have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. And then you worked into your his tech startup, and really it seems like he's trying to do his best to answer problems in everyday life. And part of that is being able to pivot and move forward and striving to be a continual learner in the field that he is in.
From our conversation, what I gathered was he started in a very niche market with something he was doing before. And then as he's moved through the project, it has pivoted, has changed, and they have a very much a more broad kind of audience or broad scope for what they're trying to do. And I agree with you. That's great to hear that they're not so much focused on one thing anymore, but it has pivoted and evolved into something that is going to help society as a whole, society in large. And it's great to hear that's what they're doing, and they're not just sticking with their niche. They're trying to benefit everybody throughout this project. And I think that's we need more people like that who are for the everyday person and for every person of any kind, especially as we're getting into these technological advances and progressing into this kind of realm of AI and technology even further. We thought we were knee deep in it now, but it seems like we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, I can only imagine how AI and this immersive technology that we'll get to in a little bit is going to impact and change your life. I mean, think about 100 years ago, we didn't even have a computer, and now like the computer that the phone that we're using to record this on for the video is more powerful than the computers that they had when they first went to the moon.
Yeah, and maybe you're going to mention this later, but he brought up Apple
Vision Pros.
Vision Pro. Yeah, I knew it was happening at the time of our conversation. It had happened. He obviously knew more about it than I did. And since that conversation, I've kind of looked into it a little more, and oh my gosh,
Hmm.
that's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy that what's happening with that and where that's going. And again, to say what I said earlier, we've only scratched the surface. Who knows what's going to happen now? And so to have someone on the forefront of this and working on it and trying to maximize the potential for what we can do with those things, I think is where Quentin is and what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and let's so since we're here, we'll just go ahead and do it. Um, with that type of technology, we are seeing the first iteration of that. So if you think like this is sort of like the first computer, it's the first computer of that type. And maybe it isn't because you had the MetaQuest and that was similar and there's a couple of VR things, but this is the first one that is, real and people are out. And I've seen videos of people on the bus or walking across the street and they're, touching and moving things. I'm like, holy cow, this guy's, working on the go, like quite literally as he's just out for his morning walk. And this is like, all right, so there's a couple things that strike me as interesting. The wild thing is you can see a virtual reality and physical reality at the same time, which is amazing and not something we have been able to do as of yet. And then on top of that, you have companies that'll have the ability to place billboards, advertisements in your consistent everyday life. And I'm sure at some point you can pay a premium to get rid of those ads, or you have those ads, which means probably eventually the cost of that technology is going to go down to a low where basically everybody has it, but we're going to be suffering through all those ads or commercials. Back in the day, people used to say as ads. You know, the idea that this is the first step on that journey, at some point, does AI get integrated into this and see and interact with the things? And then, while you can't wear the Vision Pros and go to a job interview, maybe in 5 years that technology is in a contact lens and you're in your job interview, you're wearing the contact lens and it is able to interact and have things up on a digital screen in front of you, and the person asks you a question and you AI, okay, and then you just read what the AI told you, and then we become shells of our current selves, and like, okay, then you take it a step further because everything is digital. Can then I meet with people, like let's say this podcast, we have a virtual reality headset that we put on, and we have a virtual studio that we're in, and that person that we're meeting with is there with us virtually, and maybe even both of us are here virtually, but we're all sort of physically, like you
Yeah,
see,
we're sitting at home in our pajamas, but we're all in the virtual podcast
and
together.
what you see is not us in our pajamas. You see the persona that we want everybody to see.
Hmm.
So I watched a couple of people do kind of a deep dive of what this is going to be like or what it could be potential for. And I'm trying to kind of connect all the dots in my head and listen to what they're saying. Man, that's going to be really, really wild. Again, the amount of leaps that we've had in our lifetime is wild. Like the cell phones when I was a kid was like a gigantic brick, and you had to charge like 3 times a day, and maybe you got a phone call on it twice, and you're like, whoa, all right, I got a phone. I'm calling you from my phone, my car. Wow. Half the conversation was how you were talking on a cell phone because nobody had cell phones. Now nobody has home phones. Everybody has cell phones. And it just it's a little bit scary to think of how that's going to go. Exciting for sure. And I hope that people like Quentin can help to shape and mold that into something that's actually beneficial for society. Wild and interesting for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, it's great to hear him on the forefront of this with the intention he has and the desire he has to make ethical choices and be moral and be conscious of what's happening. And I don't remember if it was with Quentin or with William Smith, but we talked about, the potential for the AI scare or the potential for the fear of technology and like you're saying, what we're capable of. Because as exciting as it is, all these amazing things we can do with it, there are fears to be considered about what it's going to do to us as a society, how much of a role AI is going to play into it, and what we're actually going to be capable of doing by the time more and more iterations of this technology come out, and it's fun to speculate. Can be scary to speculate as well. But like you said, I'm glad that there's people like Quentin who are trying to get on the forefront of this and get ahead of this as it's happening to try to mitigate these negative outcomes that potentially could happen. And it's funny. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but we're sitting here talking about all of this and the future of technology, future of AI, future of the digital realm, and all I can think of is Wally and all the people in Wally who are end up sitting around. And that's an extreme example, I think. But
Well,
the more we're talking about it, the more plausible that seems, and the more concerning that outcome could be. So again, it's nice to hear that people like him who are trying to get ahead of it and make sure that they're carving the right path for this technology and what we do with it to try to help us as a whole benefit from it rather than let it become our downfall.
right. Because okay, so Wally, all right, so let's do it. So if in Wall-E, the human people were on these floating little chairs and they were moving around and still doing quote unquote work. But really, I think in actuality, we humans would be staying at home and be ve in a vegetable state here, v virtually with the headset or whatever, the contacts, glasses, whatever, living their life outside of there. But the machines and the AI would be taking over the quote unquote jobs, and we wouldn't be floating around on no chairs doing anything or any interacting physically with another human, but rather it be, in our there's another movie. It's an actual movie. Um, can't think of what it's called, but they get rid of water and they replace it with Gatorade. And it kind of goes to that kind of dystopian type future. Nobody actually interacts or does anything with people. Ideology, it's something. I don't know. If you guys know what it is and you're listening, let me know in the show in the comment or something because anyways, but they got rid of that and people weren't interacting with people and long and short of it, they had to get water back so they could have plants and revitalize society. But it would be something like that where you just sit at home in our comfy chair and quote unquote live life through the screen that is attached to our head or inside of our retinas and not actually go or do anything. That's the concern. So again, Quentin, let's put some work in so that that doesn't become reality, please. Something that struck me as wonderful about Quentin is he's talked about being able to go and teach himself the things that needed to be done in order to do the job that was necessary. And, you know, on top of that, he talked about the neurodivergent thinker and the neurotypical thinker, where the neurodivergent thinker is able to think outside the box, and then the neurotypical thinker is the person who basically does the thing that everybody else tells them to do. And we need both of those people. Being able to be a neurodivergent thinker is able to think outside the box, come up with new things. The people who came up with this, with the Apple Vision Pros, is those people. Then you have the people who, after that idea is made, you have the people who put that idea into action, who put the work in to build that idea that the other people have, and that's a neurotypical thinker. And I think I have heard that very rarely before. So it was interesting to hear him talk about that from that kind of perspective.
Absolutely. I think it's great that he's trying to find those kinds of people, the neuro divergent thinkers who have different ideas and different ways of looking at things and using them, sorry, not using them, but adding them to the team and uh, taking what he can from their line of thinking to have that out of the box idea and have that out of the box thinking and approach things differently from ways that most people might not think of. Well, not only because I think it's beneficial to the mission, beneficial to the program, beneficial to the product, beneficial to everything, but it also gives them a chance. He talked about sometimes they're overlooked, sometimes they're not considered the same way that a neurotypical person might be considered for whatever reason, because they don't do what they're supposed to do, because they're not yes men or yes women, whatever the reason is. It's great to hear that he has that out of the box thinking on his side, but then also he's going out of his way to benefit those people as well, which ties back into his original mission, which is to help everybody, if he can with his technology, make it a beneficial thing for everybody to help improve their lives. And he's already done that in these people's lives and as they work to improve everyone else's life too.
Another thing I thought was really interesting for him, he talked about how you can use the local culture to build something for the local culture because he's from Georgia,
Atlanta,
right?
Atlanta,
Yeah,
Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia, and so he lived there, and so now he is trying to do something to give back to that community. I think that's that, and he talked about as a core identity to be a a positive person and to maintain a positive impact above all else. So I think that those as his core principles, and then with the need or the desire to give back to his community is admirable.
I agree. And I think I told him during our conversation, but the fact that he has in his mind that he's going to be a positive role model for the people in and around his hometown, again, is another admirable quality about Quentin is he doesn't want to just be another name or another face or a negative something for people to look at or point to or say, hey, well, yeah, remember Quentin? Well, he did this, this, and this. So, I mean, might as well follow in those footsteps. But now it's, hey, you remember Quentin? Oh yeah, I remember that guy. Well, he's doing this, this, and this. That's so cool. Let me try to be like him. And so, like you said, developing or working with your culture and where you're from can help you put a unique spin on what you're doing, but also be like Quentin in the fact that he's wanting to give back to that community, give back to that culture, and be a positive example for people who were like him when he was younger and growing up, and someone they can look up to and say, "Hey, look what he's doing. I like what he's doing. I want to be like him." Because not that I have anything to say about Atlanta, Georgia, but we all know what it's like to come from somewhere that has a bad reputation or come from somewhere that it feels like you're being put into a box. And so being able to break out of that box or break out of the mold, quote unquote, is astronomical. And he's paving the way for so many other people. And he's done a lot already to help them kind of realize and see that they don't have to be what people say they are. They don't have to be um, the product of their environment. They can break out of it and do much more.
Make sure you follow us on social media. You can find the podcast at Prestigious Pod.
You can find me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
You can find me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
And if you like our content and would like to subscribe to our email, you can do that via our social media or on the website.
Make sure you also join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
If you would like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life by me, Chris Bean, you can do that by reaching out on one of my social medias or by emailing the podcast at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Those are the points. Make sure you come back next week for even more points and another great conversation. Until next time, I'm Chris Kent.
And I'm Chris Bean.